Live.
So today we have a different toy, and we are live.
Doesn't sound annoying. Are you going to shake that every time I say something?
Oh no, if I want to interrupt you, exactly.
Okay.
Okay guys, hey everyone. So this is a collection of blueprints. We are back. And today my guest is this amazing guy. I met him 3-4 weeks ago in Nusa Penida here in Bali. It's a beautiful island. And we met and we talked and we thought like, I'm going to invite him for on podcast. And his name is Christian You said it.
Almost. So the German pronunciation is Christian Oechtering. I think in American would be like Christian Oechtering or Ostrich.
Oechtering sounds better. Okay, Christian, thank you so much for being here, my man.
Thank you for having me here. I'm so excited. It's my first podcast.
Hey,
I never planned it.
Taking your virginity away, yes. Okay, so yeah, thank you very much for being here today. And how about we start with you telling me a little bit about yourself, where you're from, where you grew up, and just a little story about who is Christian.
So I am originally from a small town in Germany called Düsseldorf. Very unexciteful, and usually when I'm internationally around, I say from Berlin. Sounds cooler. Where I lived before. But no, I grew up, born and raised in Düsseldorf. Town is like a 700,000 population. Not really famous for anything. It's nice, medium-sized German, boring, sweet, safe town. Mm-hmm. And then I went on to live very briefly in Africa for 2 months. I don't think that counts as living, but I just said.
What was the reason for that?
That was just like a random opportunity of going with a friend of mine to George, which is 6 hours away from Cape Town, close to Neisner, and like to work in a school for partially children from the townships and partially like children with physical disabilities. Called APD Center, Association for Physically Disabled. So you have to work with both because they usually have the institution is set up to provide as well for people with physical disabilities as then some with like learning disabilities, or in those cases also kids with criminal background.
How old you were at that time?
I was 19.
19,
yeah.
Right. And that was, you already graduated your high school.
Exactly. I just graduated. I did one extra round in Germany. I flaked 1 year because I didn't spend much time 1 year in the school, half a year, doing funky stuff otherwise. And then basically was 1 year later out of school than usual. I'm a late bloomer.
What, in education or as
in general? I like to, yes, I would also say like I just like to enjoy.
Fantastic. So what about your family, your mom and dad, your sisters, brothers? I remember you told me it's quite complicated, but...
No, it's not that complicated. I mean, I have 1.5 siblings. I have like a full blood sister and a half brother from my dad's first marriage. My dad is German, blonde and blue-eyed from Warendorf. And my mom is half Spanish, half Dominican, but grew up in New York.
And that's what explains the curly hair.
Yeah, it explains the curly hair. Yeah, wait, nobody is going to hear it, but people can see it.
Yeah, people can see it, yeah. They can see it. That is a serious afro right there.
Yeah, hence the situation that usually, no matter where I am in the world, can be in Africa or somewhere in, I don't know, Central Europe, and people say like, hey, you know how you look like? Guess what I say? Sideshow Bob.
Really?
Yeah.
Who is that?
It's the dude who wants to kill Bart Simpson.
Nice.
You're the first one that don't know him. Oh my God. I never said it.
I don't know a lot of things. Okay, so...
So yeah, sorry. Born and raised in Himmelgeist, Düsseldorf, and then I studied in very briefly Maastricht, the Netherlands, then worked for a year in a movie production studio in Berlin, and then I went on to study socioeconomics in Vienna and in Copenhagen in Austria and then Denmark, and then I went on with my journey.
So that was from being 19, from getting back from Africa, to the age of when you did all these studies. How old you were then?
I think I like fully studied started studying with 21, approximately. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so what happened afterwards, after the university?
After university, I co-founded my first internet startup with friends of mine out of, actually not of university, but like more like close friends in Austria, in Vienna. Mm-hmm. And then I went on, because we didn't become Facebook. I was really big chance not to in any ways. And then I started working in the tech sector in Cologne, Berlin, then Africa again, and mostly Europe, and then afterwards Singapore, Tokyo briefly, and then Bali.
So that was kind of the corporate journey for you, more or less.
Yes.
Yeah, and
that's life and personal. It's like, I mean, business and personal both.
Yeah, and then you kind of followed it using your education, what you studied, doing the corporate.
You mean if I followed my educational kind of like setup, basically?
Yeah, because I remember you told me the story about you having this very funny interaction with one of the CEOs on the phone, which I would like you to share. But so that was you saying that you were in corporate life at that time.
So which time? So basically, I mean, I went corporate in, I would say, 2009-ish. I went corporate, and then was flip-flopping between corporate, startup, myself doing something, then corporate, startup, and so forth. Yeah.
Right. Because it's difficult to follow the story, what Christian says, because he's done so many different things. So now how does the African story fits in all of this?
My Africa journey. So due to my experience, and actually like awesome experience briefly after high school, was just like I totally fell in love with South Africa. Cape Town, insane cool city, and like people have a like really cool vibe, and no matter if like super poor or like rich, you find like an interesting spectrum of cool characters. And I mean, country is beautiful. So I always wanted to get back in a more professional capacity. And then several years later, randomly, I met a friend of mine who did a hackathon on wheels in Germany and was telling me about it. And we both came, the drunker we get, to the brilliant business conclusion that it might be even cooler to do a hackathon on wheels in Africa. So
that is awesome. Tell me, what is hackathon?
Hackathon is a very nerdy term for basically people coming together to code in any kind of application or program can be any kind of like challenge or certain task in a specific amount of time, and then present at the end of this kind of like hackathon or challenge what they have created. And in our case, we basically spiced it up a little bit with doing it in a bus, in a coach, like travel bus, like for 50 people around, with 40 participants, and they had to travel from Harare, Zimbabwe, via Bloemfontein, Joburg to Cape Town in South Africa, like in a tour of 9 days, and had to conceive, ideate, and prototype an app on this road or from A to D, and present whatever they coded in front of a jury of investors and entrepreneurs, or like in.
That is sick. That is sick. And that consisted. That bus was, how many people were in it, and were they from all over the world or from mainly from Africa?
So on average, now it was 50-50. That was part of the mission, kind of like to have like a exchange between, I mean, African innovative and techie mindsets and internationals, like from Europe or America. So we had 40 participants, not the organizations, like 40 full participants, and 20 from them were literally from Pan-Africa, from I think 9 different countries, like Cameroon, Ghana, Uganda, South Africa, Nigeria, like across the board. And the other one were half European, half American. We had like several Americans and like even some super cool high flyers. Like one was former assistant of Marissa Mayer, the former CEO of Yahoo, or one studied like design thinking under David Cully at Stanford, which was like the dude who basically did the Apple computer for Steve Jobs.
Nice. I like how you say Yahoo. You say Yahoo.
Like the bad commercial.
And and the age was all over the place, or there was mainly.
Oh, that was
youth?
funny. Yeah, no, that was literally from 18 till the oldest one was 42, and he was the CTO of a pretty big tech company in South Africa. And he had like 150 people, like as employees or staff below him in his department. And he was just like pretty nerdy, older, kind of like cool South African who like had a family life, but he said like somehow heard about it in a blog and said like, hey, I want to take part in this adventure and like just have fun. So for some people it was kind of like just like an adventure, especially for the Americans, and then for Some others, it was literally the opportunity on finding maybe a team for an app or like for any kind of like prototype they wanted to execute. So people came either with ideas or totally tabula rasa, like no idea at all. And there were like 50% of the coding background, and the others were like business design, marketing, or even physicians. We had even like a dude who went to Harvard and worked like in clinics in the favela and just like loved startup life and wanted to take part. So it was like a super wild random mix.
And how many people were there?
You mean like in over the years or like?
No, on that project when you were there.
We started like the volunteer team. So it was a friend of me who co-founded it, and then we had like 6 in the core team, one from Zimbabwe, one from South Africa, one from Denmark, and 2 German dudes. That was it actually, 5, I think. And then we had like, I would say in the beginning maybe like 4 interns, but that was then basically us. That was the core team at the beginning, and then it grew from there. So we did it over the course of 3 years, and then at the end actually, we never made money, as brilliant as this business sounds, but it was like corporate sponsorships who financed it, and due to like the craziness of the idea, we got like super good press. Like it was kind of like funny enough to write and talk about. So we got published in the Wall Street Journal, Al Jazeera, BBC, Channel Plus, CNN. So like worldwide press about it, like 41 nerds doing a hackathon in Africa or whatever.
What do you think? What was the best thing about it? Like, what is the kind of a products or fruits or at the end of this? Like, you didn't make any money, so I'm guessing you didn't get any investors in it. I mean, for you guys, you had a blast because you're just meeting all these cool people and trying to do stuff together. But in general, because it got such a publicity, that could be a kind of a good, just kind of. For younger people to watch it and kind of inspiring them to do things like that. Yeah,
so we realized, but also we diverted like in the core team that it's not like a big business idea in order to maybe put a fund structure on top to like basically finance the really good ideas. It wasn't, the quality of the ideas wasn't good enough. We had crazy ideas from, or even like one app actually that got coded. It's called Bribe, and it's a bribery recommendation app.
You mentioned me about that one. I can't wait. Tell it. That's
but
awesome.
Basically, just to answer your first point or first question, which is we realized it wasn't necessarily the quality of ideas or like have a startup incubator that could work like with quality startups. Like time frame is too short, and people like have different kind of like interests, like in terms of when they join and so. But what did work, and that was amazing actually, it was a catapult and like amazing network creator between these kind of like highly talented individuals. And there were like, I don't know, like concrete examples where some kids that literally are usually made pretty good money, like $1,000 or $2,000 per month in order to feed a family in Zimbabwe with like, these scammy stuff that you can sometimes get in your email, in terms of not the one with the Nigerian prince.
Oh, the Nigerian prince,
like,
that's the
one. Not that one, but like different ones, like literally like they hijack thousands of computers and then use it like for spam mail, but they make quite good money with it, with like very small percentage of people clicking on these.
Oh wow!
And well, like so, hacker kids autodidactically taught himself how to code, and those were like the first business just opportunities to make some money. And they got like really good connections, and one of them was later on invited to the African Leadership Conference, was allowed to interview Barack Obama, and they actually co-founded startups afterwards with the network that they found through that thing. So it was more like an exchange and interchange of kind of like network and elevating people to more opportunities. And the other thing was just literally that kind of exchange of ideas and perspectives, in terms of you suddenly realize whatever business ideas or ideas for solutions you have as a Westerner or European person from Europe or anywhere, it can be totally different, like polar opposites from the one that actually how an African like smart mind kind of like would approach it. And that was fascinating to see suddenly like total different perspectives that you actually would have to consider. But then so for example, we had to bribe quite often, like the random police or military police or
officials,
basically, whatever. And you never know how much is like kind of like a good amount to pay. So they decided, like, if you can't get around the problem, how awesome would it be if we at least can make like an educated...
You see, there's no struggle in Bali. They have a list.
Yes, no, exactly. That's a good thing about here. It's quite clear. But even there's a slight kind of like spread or spectrum that you like can divert in between. There's like people pay. I don't know.
They have different lists as well.
Then depends on the negotiation
they see you
skills.
by a mile. They're like, we're going to give them this list. Very low.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. If you drive without a helmet, like 200,000 or 1 million, depending on how good you negotiate. Yeah. So they came up with that idea and actually like made a working product that later on collected data on the instances where it happened, but also gave you a recommendation. But also so was kind of like a tool on collecting data on where and when and how much is being grabbed in certain situations.
So the way they would work, would they like post and say like in this area I got stopped and this is the amount what I gave? How would they give the kind of information which you can trust in the sense of like that area, you know for sure that this is the amount? I mean,
it's crowdsourced data. Maybe there's like a benchmark at the beginning. Maybe there's like no data points at the beginning. You have to start somewhere. But I mean, imagine like you're starting Wikipedia, kind of like as a collective database and informative database on all these different data points. And over time, it gets more clarity or more function. Of course, you don't start like from first day on, this is the right thing. Maybe there's like a protocol that could help or work in terms of to figure out the right amount or something. But in this case, it was basically just like first collecting and then suggesting. But funnily, because we're journalists on board that were blogging about it, literally someone from Transparency International in London heard about it, and they basically gave us a call while we're still on tour, asking to cooperate with that team on that product because they wanted to provide them with data, but also then access the data once it basically gets live. So there was kind of like in specific interest in the market. That was funny, but you couldn't monetize that really.
And no investors.
No investors.
Who's going to invest? How big is the investment or average?
I mean, you could see it from that side. I mean, the whole like kind of, illicit kind of like market for bribery worldwide, like cross sector, is around like $60 trillion.
Oh my God.
So it's a pretty big market opportunity.
But in the same time, it's like, well, if you get a lot of people signing up for it, you can easily go for ads and stuff and start, just like Tinder works or just like any of the other apps, Instagrams and. I mean, hey,
we talk in 2013, right?
Oh, okay.
There was
Is it still on? Should get in the Bali one.
Maybe not. So the quality of the ideas were kind of like sometimes funky or like super wide. One was. We came up with 3 sectors that we wanted to have the people work in: energy, healthcare, and education, which is like super broad, but we just wanted to give them like lots of kind of like free range to work in. And I remember Mark Chituma, 25-year-old dude from Cameroon, but studied engineering in Cape Town, and he taught himself how to code. And he came by while I was sitting with the journalist on the bus, and he said like, Christian, I have a business idea and I need your feedback. And I'm like, okay, Mark, cool, tell me what is it? And he, that was quite wild. He said like, what do you think about whorapedme.com? And I'm like, what the fuck? And I had to ask like, could you please specify what do you mean, business? And he basically says, the problem is so many women get raped in South Africa. The official quota is like 5%. The shadow quota is much higher. So I want to set up a platform where you can load up anonymously a profile of a rapist. If enough profile matches, they get sent to the police to enforce investigation and to put public pressure on the problem. And there was like a prime example of like, never thought about like, first of all, an app or a solution for that specific problem because that problem wasn't for us on the radar. But suddenly you hear like it's a really big social and political issue, actually. I mean, specifically social and, life destroyer in so many families, in so many ways, like for across the population. So suddenly, like, super interesting to think about, like, what could you do? I mean, as crazy as it sounds, but like in order to solve such issues. Yeah,
because that is a really like a practical thing to have. I mean, that's something, as you say, can help for families and a lot of those.
They didn't execute it at the end. It's like,
yeah, because like that could be about anything. Like you go outside and you need to buy something. So where's the best place to buy vegetables? Where's the best place to buy fruit and the price wise? And I'm not comparing this about the rape stuff. Where's the best area to go?
Very well.
Oh, I was wandering there for hours. Nothing happened. Damn it.
So bad.
Really bad. But And then that's. And what do you think? What you gained yourself? What do you think you gained yourself from this project?
For me, I think it's a double-sided sword in terms of it made me, because the idea was so bananas, but on one side also like so cool and was so much fun. We managed to literally, I mean, there were similar tours like in the United States happening, or we did it in Germany, but we didn't think like we could do it on that scale in Africa, like in literally 14 different countries in Africa. It kind of like, it gave you pretty kind of like pride feeling of like, you know, you're capable to pull that thing off, so you can do like other crazy stuff, other crazy projects. So that was really empowering in that regard. And then it was like an awesome network of super interesting people that I'm still partially connected with today. Still are some of my friends, because it's like such a weird experience binds you together.
Right. That is very interesting. And then, so what is that? What do you do now professionally?
It's a very good question. Since I am in Bali, which is the September 2019, I started working with. That's total switch of my career path to a certain degree. Started working with the hospitality sector. So I joined a group of German investors in order to build a eco boutique hotel group with a very basically like sustainable touch, close to Lombok on the Gillies and other places. But that's kind of like not filling my full week. So I'm basically still dabbling with tech and startups ideas. So I just co-founded a company with a friend of mine called SoHemp. About biodegradable packaging based on hemp, biopolymer, and seaweed in the future as well for different applications. So we start with thin film plastics for basically substituting plastic bags, and then other applications as well. Basically trying to like find the next raw material for the future for our generation.
It is kind of like an incubator here in Bali for startups. A lot of people do startups here. Yeah. What is the first thing what someone needs to learn or understand if they want to do a startup? And what is startup? If you would define what is startup?
So just to add on your first point, Bali the incubator. It's funny because I have like friends in Europe that sometimes like think like, dude, you dropped out of the matrix. That's awesome. It's like, no, man, you're still fully in it. You can do everything and anything you want to yourself, just like you do it by the beach. That's the beauty about it. Yeah. But I still have to like explain that sometimes. But it's like you find so many talented kind of like people, and whatever you don't find yet on Bali, I mean, for a local market, a small scale market, you can even like do it yourself. I have an Italian friend who complained about the cheese quality and started like doing a cheese company that's now quite big. And I mean, at least like Bali-wide did being distributed.
Now he got his cheese.
Indonesia. No, she got a cheese.
Is that enough for him?
Exactly. And so to answer your second questions, I mean, a startup, to start, the only thing you need is an idea, ideally a bigger vision, and then just the will to execute it and just start it. I mean, it's a startup. I mean, you can most things are start downs in experience, but startup is the better way.
Is it for all of the startups is all about getting investors? So having your idea, pitch it.
No.
And or you just do your own money and you have your own take a loan or whatever.
Perspectively speaking, so that's one misconception in terms of if you just think about kind of like the spectrum of companies. You have, let's say, like very early there is a dude sitting on a table in front of a microphone and having a brilliant business idea and thinking about what to do next. And then basically from that stage, from the dude with the idea, it goes to, if you start like working on it, you could call it already like early stage / startup. Then, like maybe you have some success, you sell a product, you sell a service, and you start hiring more people and you start to incorporate it. You basically create a real formal structure around it, and suddenly, becomes a little company, small and medium-sized enterprise, and that's like still early stage. And then if you go into growth, which is the growth stage, you go into maybe like, from that little business idea at the table, it became like a big, gigantic media empire, and now like with 200 people or 300 or 400, 500 people, and it's growth in later stage. And then you have afterwards literally the conglomerates or international companies that then maybe like even go to the public markets in terms of like IPO, sell stocks, and that's the spectrum of markets that you have. You have like startup, early stage, later stage, growth stage, and basically you can start with a startup, like your own capital. Ideally, you don't even need capital because your business or your service or your product sells itself. And then because equity of your company is should be the most expensive or pricey thing of what you're creating, right? If you believe in a good product that you sell and you don't need somebody to finance the gap to get that proof of concept for a certain product, service within a certain market, ideally you make money from day zero and you're not dependent on anyone and you keep it private. I mean, one of these examples, random one, but it's Patagonia, brilliant fashion companies around from the 70s. Dude started himself as a passionate kind of outdoor dude, and that company is still private, makes around 2 billion in revenues, and they never considered, because if you go public or if you take other people's money, you would also have to take their interest, considerations, ideas into consideration. Can be sometimes helpful if it's smart capital, if it makes sense for your idea, or maybe if you go in the new age Silicon Valley mantra of market share now, revenue later. I don't have a clue of how to make money. I'm just getting eyeballs. Like, I don't know, best example now in the last months during Corona is Clubhouse, for example. I mean, no revenue model, but they believe like the next big social network. Question, was it a Corona hype thing and is everybody still caring, or is like actually saying everybody now was fun for the time being? But yeah.
Do you know how many startups you were part of?
In different capacities. So from the founder side, the co-worker side, the investor side, or the evaluator side. So because I did basically all of these, I founded myself. I worked for an investor in different startups. I invested for an investor in startups. I evaluated for an investor or corporate, basically different startups. So I worked in these different capacities. And let's say directly, like working, around probably 30 companies. And
in how long time? That's been last 5-6 years, or?
Let's say, no, that's definitely the last 10 years.
Just
last 11 years. Yeah. And then in a more like with evaluation, that goes into the hundreds, because if you screen startups, you have to screen several
So all I need is a good idea, basically, and then I have to come to you.
That's all you need. And if it's really good, I'm going to steal it and do it myself. But if it's so medium and I believe in it, I just give you the money. Then you do it.
Nice one. I think that's the first segment. What is this thing? Is not working. It sounds so bizarre. Chris.
The right word.
It's going to be the one video. I don't know why I'm saying we're back. What I want to talk to you about, and when we were in Nusa Penida, I found out that Chris is quite knowledgeable in one specific area. That's not the only specific area. He's very knowledgeable about startups, about business, about coding, about a lot of things.
Dinosaurs.
That's next podcast, or maybe a different one. But that was my second time when I had a journey with psychedelics on Nusa Penida. And then when I told to Chris, I was super excited as well. And then Chris told me that he has way more knowledge about it.
I would put it like that. Maybe a little bit more experience.
Much more experience. So tell me straight away what psychedelics mean to you.
Psychedelics to me. Let's start with the real definition where it comes from. It's like psychos delos, which is Greek for manifestation of the mind, and for me it is mainly that. I don't see it like per se, or first definition would be like as a drug or anything like that. It's a usually chemical compound that helps you to get into a certain very irregular but clearing state of mind. Or for that matter, also like something very wild in that regard.
And which are the most famous, well-known psychedelics out there?
From my perspective, I would say, it always starts with acid, LSD or LSD 25, lysergic acid diethylamide.
Say it again.
LSD, aka acid, which stands for lysergic acid diethylamide, which is basically, that's a German, I think, actually translation. but lysergic acid diethylamide.
Oh,
but
there you go, much clearer now.
It was the 25th derivative that Albert Hofmann synthesized based on ergot, which is funnily a fungi, not a fungi like you, but a fungi.
We all are fungi.
We are fungi, like mycelium. And it's a cousin basically of the other very well-known, and especially on this island, psychedelic called magic mushrooms, aka psilocybin, which is the
that's what
compound.
magic mushrooms, you can go psilocybin.
Psilocybin, psilocybin. There are also different chemical variations, but that's the main one, especially with magic mushrooms. And it's kind of, hence why the trip can be a very similar experience, very similar to acid. The only thing is, because it's organic, you can't calibrate this that well, as for example with LSD or acid.
When you say calibrate, what do you mean by that, please?
Basically know exactly what kind of potency and amount of the chemical compound is within either that mushroom head, that stick, or for that matter in acid and liquid or in crystallized form.
Because as I understand so far, so I had 3 trips so far
on magic mushrooms.
Yeah, and as far as I understand that with magic mushrooms it's difficult if you just have plants in a plant version. Then one bag can be much stronger than the other bag. It depends, like what areas is collected. And I was just actually hanging out with my friend who's
depends also when it's collected, like how long was it grown and the size of it. In this case, size matters.
So a Canadian friend, she told me that the best way to do it, to have these batches. So you get like a big amount of mushrooms, dry them, then mix them, like pulverize them, and put them in capsules. Have you ever heard that before?
Yeah, totally. Perfect for microdosing.
Yeah, and then you know exactly what it is. So one, like these 3 capsules not going to be much stronger than the other ones because they all are mixed together.
It gives you, it's actually a very, very smart method in order to have some kind of like better calibration or determination of how much is in one.
Measurement of how much that could be.
Yeah, okay. Definitely.
And in your experience, would you agree that sometimes mushrooms can be stronger and sometimes the same amount can be totally different?
Of course. I mean, in this case, it also depends on different factors, such as, I mean, first of all, are you doing it on a sober stomach? The more sober you are, the less food you have in your stomach because you digest it first via the stomach acid. The heavier it can hit you. This is also why, like with magic mushrooms, if you are in any kind of bad trip or want to like maybe like tune it down, you could eat something, especially carbs or sugar-wise, and then actually it will decrease the trip experience.
It's like it dilutes stuff what is in your stomach.
Exactly. It doesn't happen with acid. It doesn't work with acid. It's like if you're on it, you are in for the ride and you can't stop it earlier.
Right. When you say acid, that's not LSD.
Sorry, acid, aka LSD. Exactly.
Okay. Or so the first one you said was LSD. Second one is magic mushrooms, or aka
psilocybin.
Psilocybin. Yeah. What else is there?
With acid, also there are different variations from the Hoffman formula to orange sunshine or white fluff.
I presume Hoffman, not the one who does the cold showers.
No, exactly different one. Yeah, not Wim Hof.
And that's Hoff.
Exactly, that's Wim Hof. No, Albert Hoffman, the founder, basically. There was Bicycle Day was recently in April, basically when he founded it and came across it and then took a bicycle home and went on the first kind of like trip, at least in this context, on modern acid and told about that experience. Which
right. Okay, let's just cover the names of them and the biggest types. So we have LSD, we have mushrooms. What else is there?
DMT, but this is also we go more into like kind of the what they call like plant medicine segment. There is DMT, and then in terms of psychedelic plants, mescaline, peyote, ayahuasca is a mix of different, usually.
And that's very famous. Ayahuasca. That's the what people talk a lot.
I mean, it's about
and it's a combination of plants,
But that's kind of like it's a you could say like jungle family recipe cocktail then depending on where you are, if in Colombia, Peru, or wheresoever, you get different variations and recipes of it that bring it to that whatever state that you're seeking.
Yeah, and ayahuasca started originally like ceremonies they used for ceremonies back for Native Indians. Was it?
Native Indians. I mean, in this case, Native Indians, you would say. I mean, there are 3 perspectives. I mean, ayahuasca specifically originates in Latin America. So you could say like Native Indian. If you say like Amazonian Indians, then you're absolutely right. But psychedelics, interestingly, no matter which culture on the planet you're talking about, from Central Europe, basically Druids back in the day, even like pre-Great Britain, kind of like England and even Roman times, or even further than that, basically we have, long story short, a very long human history of getting high together and getting into a higher mental state.
What was the book? There was one of the books that we're actually talking about that most of the religions, pretty much all the religions back in the days, they got like spiked up wines with some drugs and all that kind of stuff, and then they see those visions. And
you mean like Jesus roofied?
Pretty much, yeah. That's what I meant.
Can totally see that creep.
Okay, so did we cover the main types? What about the ones where they did? I think I've seen on TV. They go to the jungles and they get these toads or these frogs. Is it toad? And they lick them, or what is the deal there?
So that's usually DMT. Can also be a different kind of like poison with different chemical compounds. But most of the time it's the original one, or not the original one, because you find variations of DMT in plants as well as in animals. And in this case specifically, there are certain kinds of toads, such as the Sonoran desert toad, that usually the poison on the back that it secretes is being collected, dried, crystallized, and then smoked. That's basically one form of DMT.
That's
AKA,
a shit way to go.
AKA Bufo. I found it
crystallized and smoked.
I found it more interesting, like, how do you get there? Like,
fuck.
There's a toad. Oh, what is on the back? Let's smoke it. I'm out of weed.
I'm out of weed somewhere in the jungle. Like 1,000 years ago.
Let's smoke a toad. I mean, I smoked banana, like skin and everything, but it's like, I haven't tried the toad yet in that context.
That's a good one. What are you having up, toad? Cool.
I mean, I met a German dude here who was on travels. He was befriended with a friend of mine from Taiwan who went out for dinner, and he basically offered me, "You want to smoke some termites nest?" And I'm like, "What? Termites nest?" And he's like, "Yeah, man, I went to Sulawesi, like on this ferry, and there are these truck drivers, and they all smoke termites nests." And I'm like,
"What the hell?"
And he basically like shows me this. I mean, it's tasted kind of like woody and kind of like smoky cigar-y, like nice, but it didn't give you like a high, at least from what I can tell.
Tastes like woody.
We smoked termites nest. So I mean, depending on where you are, right?
From
it's
Toy
like
Story, let's smoke woody. You can do that too. Oh, that's insane. Like in Latvia, I remember there's this thing they do, well, not just Latvia, but probably most of the Eastern Europe or Northern Europe. They drink very strong tea, and there's a name for it. They call it chefir. Yeah, okay. But that's probably Latvian for that. I don't know what would be the English word for it. All it is, it's some kind of one type of a tea, which is like a black, one of the black teas, and they just put a lot of bags in there and then make it very strong, and then they tripping from that shit. And they even tell stories like how they throw tea bags in a prison so the prisoners can have some chefir and shit. I don't know how much that is true.
Let's get some tea here.
Yeah. So did we cover the all the main psychedelics?
I would say like the most prevalent ones. So just for the record, LSD, psilocybin, DMT in its various forms, and then in terms of psychedelics, peyote, ayahuasca. I'm definitely forgetting some. So
how does the weed goes in all of that? Is weed is not considered to be psychedelic?
Not considered psychedelic. I mean, especially so the chemical compounds are CBD or THC, tetrahydrocannabinol or cannabinoids, and in this case, I mean, if you increase the dosage of THC, which I mean nowadays is quite easy, like with the high potent kind of like weed strains that you can buy, especially in the legalized kind of like countries and markets. You can get to that state, but I usually hear like actually from friends, especially also the not psychonauts, it gets them mostly like in an anxious or kind of like paranoid state. It's like usually what the people that don't like to smoke weed kind of like say, in my experience.
Yeah, they don't want to get paranoid. And then again, it's interesting to talk about in how many different ways you can actually consume certain drugs. I like how I
don't like where this is going.
I approach this like very. This is very interesting how we get high. So weed, you can smoke it, you can eat it. So do the edibles. But when it becomes edible, it's apparently a different kind of chemical. Is it?
No. I mean, the chemical compound stays the same. Just some of them are, depending on which one it is, they don't lose any potency or anything of the chemical structure when you change the aggregate state, or when you like, I don't know, cook it, chunk it down or whatsoever. It basically stays potent. So
what do you say? What is better? Is it smoke it or it's eat it?
Depends on the chemical compound, right? It's like, so in this case, I mean, ayahuasca you drink, and DMT is one of the main ingredients, but it is the combination of several others that kind of like make that specific effect. So
yeah, no, I was meaning weed for weed specifically.
Sorry,
that's right.
I'd say it's like potato, tomato, doesn't matter. It's like, good solid.
Who says potato?
Potato. Yeah.
I know tomato. I never heard potato.
That's true. I don't know. Let's look out for that.
Is that
unicorn.
the German thing?
It's a unicorn out there talking like that.
Okay, so it's kind of a preference basically for smoking weed or
I would
eating,
say so.
eating
I mean,
it.
it's like also, I mean, you with the edibles, you need to have them available, or you bake it, right? It's like, I mean, smoking is just like so much easier. Hence,
Yeah.
I think the prevalence for
But
smoking.
also for edibles, it kicks in much later.
Ooh, I mean, I that's the danger of it. It's like you can much easier miscalculate with edibles than with smoking it, I would say. I mean, my best experience was we put a gram of hash in Berlin like into some wheat brownies that we baked, and we were unexpected the potency of that specific hash that we had, and we were, the girlfriend of mine and me were like both high for solid 26 hours. And I remember the next day I had to go to a dinner party, and I was still stoned like crazy, and she also like called me panically from a family
crazy.
dinner. I was like, I'm still stoned, and I'm like, I'm so sorry, we miscalculated. Yeah,
Tell to some listeners who are total noobs or don't know much about weed, what's the difference between weed and hash?
I mean, one is the regular plant, kind of the how do you say, pollinated plant. That's the bushy buds they talk about, whatever, like names from Orange Kush, Pineapple Express, or
Pineapple Express. That's the famous one. That's the biggest one.
Totally.
Thanks, Joe Rogan. Oh, not Joe Rogan. Seth Rogan. Shit.
Seth Rogan.
And Joe Rogan as well. Thanks for all the weed advocating.
Yeah, stop brown nosing. And basically, hash kind of like, I mean, the classics Moroccan is the what is it? Not cream tart pollen, but basically the little kind of like pollens that you then munch together, which then looks like chocolate almost, and it's like more creamy, sticky, and more prevalent, like in North Africa and the Arabian Peninsula, and everywhere it's hard to smuggle.
There you go. Okay. What else can we talk about? Psychedelics. There's a lot we can talk about psychedelics.
I mean, one thing is I would always say for those who are not so acquainted, like, never be afraid of trying it. Just always remember the most important rules, which is mindset and setting. So always like be in a good mindset in order to try to know what you're doing and do it sober. That's also one very important factor. Like no other substances involved as well. And then the setting, that if you're safe, you're good, do it with friends or maybe with someone who has the experience and doesn't need to be a shaman or something.
Setting or setup? Which one?
Definitely setting, not setup. I mean, depends on the setup.
Yeah, no, that is true, definitely. The first time I tried it, and to be honest, like I was surprised it wasn't as crazy as I thought it was going to be. Some part of me felt like I'm almost like high, like weed. A lot of giggles and just a very good mood. But yeah, there were certain things were different.
So you went to the first layer, let's put it like that.
Yeah, I know. I just tipped my toe. I just tipped my toe in this. So what was the first time and what was your first experience with psychedelics?
First time, first experience. I mean, first time wasn't really spectacular. It was like I found some dried mushrooms in my sister's room when I was, I think, like 15 or so, and then took it with her ex-boyfriend and some other friends. That was just like an interesting, enlightening, delightful experience, nothing too crazy. But definitely much crazier, some slightly irresponsible but funnier situations unfolded in the years afterwards. I don't know, it's like, for example, I now think twice before dropping 400 mics of acid in Ho Chi Minh in the morning at 6 a.m. before the Monday traffic starts.
You do you think twice? Okay.
Yes, I wouldn't do it again. Let's put it like that.
Wow.
Yeah, with I mean, she was a super hot, super cool girl from Kiev, and that was exactly the rookie mistake. We took it at 4 a.m. first tap, and like didn't feel it like after 1.5 hours. So like let's do another one. It's like it's gone bad. Then we took another one, and then like literally 3 hours later, it hit us like
Wow.
double as hard. That was really funny.
Should we do the shout out to the super hot girl from Kiev?
Oh, definitely. Yes.
What's her name?
Her name is, let me think. Oh my God, now I'm on the spot.
Kiev, we love you.
With R. It's a beautiful woman with R.
With R. Rebecca?
No. Rufina.
Rufina. Oh, interesting name.
It is.
Okay. That was the first experience, and then like, how did you decide to kind of learn more about it? When you enjoyed your first experience?
I mean, I enjoyed my first experience, and for me it was. I mean, I was definitely that came much later. I would say like I was a really naughty kid, especially in my Berlin times, where I lived almost like 6-7 years in a row. I mean, over the course of different years, and I like was definitely heavier on the chemical side for a long time before I went deeper into psychedelics.
Yeah. That's what I was about to ask also, like when you thought that you would like to study about this, like to learn more about it. I don't know whether you would actually take a book and read about it, or you just talk to people and find out something interesting.
I mean, I would say like three ways. One is when I started becoming serious about it, because I definitely had like more, I would say like my Berlin days, definitely like a coke addiction. That was the nasty one. Took some time. I mean, like almost every weekend, that kind of like thing, like typical Berlin, because in Berlin everything's accessible, available, and parties all the time. So it's easy to like do this work hard, play hard thing, and you play really hard, but also very fun. But basically that was kind of and I literally had like I had not a nervous or mental breakdown, but like first time in my life, like a depression. I never had that, and it hit me hard. Like total darkness.
Because of what you were taking at the time, or just the lifestyle mainly?
All of it. It was like, for me, it's usually like a perfect storm of several factors that come together. For me, it was, I did a job in a cool company with awesome people, but I didn't like what I was doing. It was like this startup hustle, like kind of like, go big or go home, or work your ass off.
And I bet that whoever would see you having that situation would blame drugs straight away, or would blame psychedelics, instead of saying like, well, he has this and this going on and that going on, that's why he has depression.
I'm not sure. I mean, psychedelics first I didn't take as much back then. It was like quite more the very rare exclusion, or how do you say, basically like much more rare. I would take psychedelics, and it was much more like just on the chemical side, because it's kind of like Berlin is a very chemical city in that regard. Like especially, or like every big city, I have a feeling. It doesn't matter if you're in New York, Madrid, Paris, London, or Berlin. It's mostly all the same. You work a lot during the week, and then on the weekend you party, and especially like the urban nights.
Yeah, same thing in London, UK, the same thing. All the business centers, everyone.
You go to a toilet, you find everywhere the residues. I mean, what is it in London? Even like the amount that you find in the toilet flush, kind of like that they analyzed, kind of like was already saying like that is much higher on average amount that of cocaine is being used in the UK or in London specifically than anywhere else.
What is cocaine?
Cocaine.
Because I also wanted to tell me what are the main like groups. Like there's psychedelics. Yeah. So then weed is just one separate group. Is there anything else to weed, or that's one separate animal?
I mean, it's the chemical compounds. It's like you have to approach it from but I mean, I'm not a biochemist, so basically for me it's like lots of knowledge that I read about, or like personal interest. But as far as I can tell, I mean, you have the THC, the CBD. We have certain receptors, especially for CBD, THC in our body. So basically, we are made for interacting with certain kinds of chemical substances. And another perspective, actually, the human body is theoretically, or point of view, a constant drug factory. I mean, endorphins, serotonin, dopamine. I mean, we produce all the time certain kinds of substances in our body, and these either, chemical compounds that we interact with trigger certain kind of like either
adrenaline. Is adrenaline one of them?
I mean, it is a chemical compound, right? But it's like it's not I mean, I wouldn't call it like to the regular kind of like what is it, happy hormones or whatever, such as serotonin, dopamine, or for that matter. But it is. I mean, it is a.
Because in the end of the day, we are all addicts already. in a sense, because I'm addicted from dopamine. You know, like that idea being on stage, having that approval, having that like on your Facebook, having that making that craziest jump and backflip, and that's dopamine right there. So you're already junkie without taking anything.
I mean, we are. It's like a base protocol of kind of like life where you, through in this case chemicals, biochemistry, which stands so much at the core, kind of like make us do certain things, change our behavior or routinize certain behaviors or behavior patterns, right? It's like it's the evolution's kind of like framework in order to create behavior patterns or behavioral patterns. I mean, for you to procreate, you enjoy having sex. If you wouldn't enjoy it, you wouldn't procreate. So we need to make that monkey really happy when he has sex, and especially different ones.
Are you referring to me that I'm the monkey?
Both of us, we're both two monkeys basically sitting here. And then, I mean, if you would wank or like masturbate, it doesn't give you the same pleasure as interaction like with a partner, where you actually excrete oxytocin, which you don't do if you would just like wank.
Oh, really?
So hence the cooperative experience of sex or like having intercourse.
I feel pretty much the same. I don't feel much difference. Hence, I'm not bothered about dating.
Talk about your Kundalini levels.
Hence, I don't care if I'm dating anyone. Oh, are you single? You still single?
Oh, you haven't had your Kundalini experience yet.
Shit. Yeah, with my cousin. And did that already. Okay, so this segment is also going to the end, and we talked a lot about that. It's some cool stuff. That's awesome. Let's move to the next segment. We talked about so many cool things, psychedelics. We talked about your experience in Africa and startups. So you are a person who experienced a lot. And how do you get your wisdom? Where do you get your wisdom usually?
My wisdom.
Title of the chapter.
Chapter. I think, I mean, experience is a little bit of it, but I mean, I'm definitely belong to the group of people or to the group of monkeys that likes to touches the fire before it believes it's hot. That's definitely like one of those. But I learned over time that sometimes maybe it's better to talk and learn also from other people's experiences. So that's a very
like I'm doing now.
Like me learning from you, exactly. right in this instant.
What have you learned from me so far? Nothing.
No, I wouldn't say so. Like, be annoyingly funny, how to be super open, how to dance.
Hey, those things you can't read in books, can you?
No, exactly.
Talking about books, oh my God.
Yeah.
So we're having now a new segment on a collection of blueprints. I asked my guests in advance what are their like most favorite books, and if I haven't written them, I would read them, and then we can talk about them. So it's a little bit like an Oprah book club going on here. But I was very lucky that Chris mentioned as his one of the number one books. It was Sapiens. Yes. And I just read it and listened it, but I realized that Chris knows about this book more than I do. Even he read it like a year ago. So why Sapiens?
I mean, I have three books. First one was Sapiens by Yuval Harari. Second one was The Encounter by Petru Popescu. And the third one was Where Good Ideas Come From by John Levinson or so. And Sapiens specifically because it is one of these books that kind of like once you read it and you got the main points, it gives you a new perspective on life in general. And so it's kind of like, it's a little bit like nerdy talk, like a new software package basically that you download and then suddenly you're like, and
more advanced and you kind of can look at things differently. Yeah, true.
Exactly. Like that kind of like aha moment, eureka moment, which is quite beautiful. And you have that with this book, like in a few parts.
We discussed some of the parts. Which parts you thought were like the most thought-provoking and interesting?
I mean, it starts with one very simple that I really appreciated. Is kind of like looking at us as the Homo sapiens, not necessarily as kind of like the top of evolution or kind of like the
top of the chain
or whatever. It's more like kind of like see ourselves as kind of like more like an enlightened monkey, but realizing kind of like we're still that, and where so many of our behavior patterns, routines, and way of thinking, operating, and acting or reacting kind of like come from. And that was a beautiful kind of like switch. And then one to see how we operate with our mind in a different perspective, and specifically to our species, that we're able to congregate around an idea. An idea can survive us, can go beyond the existence of that specific individual, and also like why we create nation states, have a common identity, and the importance of it in comparison to why not you couldn't incentivize 10,000 monkeys with paying each one a few bananas in order to watch a game of soccer or so. So that was a very fundamental kind of like shift in perspective. And also another one that we haven't changed as much over the centuries, basically, even
as
though
we think
exactly. So basically we have still the same level of biochemical happiness as kind of like the first version of us, like let's say like 200,000 years ago, and basically we're to a certain degree experiencing things still in the same way. Our brain hasn't changed. It's just like basically the information and the things that we process around us kind of like have changed. So more like the extra perspective than the interest perspective.
And I read the book as well, but I need to next time put some notes down. But some of the things I remember was about how certain values of community being kind of pushed on everyone else. Let's say like certain rules, and then 30, 40 years later, you look at it like, what the hell was going on with these people? Like, why would they do, talking about Christianity, about burning witches and all that. And then 30, 40 years later, it's like, how did we do this? And why? With a certain basic kind of, as you mentioned, patterns of human behavior, they still the same. And it's
yes, correctly. I mean, there's still like lots of legacy rules and concepts and ideas in certain laws or regulations, no matter again which culture, depending you are on the planet, that are kind of like outdated or anachronistic.
One of the things I also remember was about that the reason why Homo sapiens, that's our ancestors, right? That's where we come from.
I mean, no, that's us. That's us. There's the parallel line that died up before the Homo erectus, and then before like the
Erectus is standing up, right? That's erectus, maybe.
The standing monkey, basically.
Standing monkey,
like,
and and sapiens were not standing monkeys.
Well, no, already it's like, but that's kind of like, so sapiens comes from sapientia, kind of the Latin word for wise, so the wise monkey.
Wise monkey. Yeah. I knew those things. I just pretending. I'm pretending. No, I'm more erectus, 100%. and not always, anyways.
So we got from kind of like erected standing monkey to like wise monkey.
Here you go, in between. And they were mentioning that Homo sapiens were the ones who, instead of like simplifying their reactions on things what happening around them, they're actually like telling stories. Yes. So they were telling stories. Let's say if they one of the members of the tribe would see
I slaughtered this giant mammoth around the corner. Look.
I was going with saying that there's a crocodile at the river somewhere. Yeah. And then, so the other species, they would just use a very simple way to describe. They would say, crocodile, river, kind of watch out. And our ancestors, they were telling a story. There's this massive crocodile around. You shouldn't be walking out there, blah, blah, blah. It's like, did you remember that part? Or I'm just pulling it from somewhere.
I think no. It definitely was part of the book in terms of like storytelling and the importance of it for us as a narrative and like for shaping identity. Transporting information. It was kind of.
I was the right side. And so anyone who's listening to this, Sapiens is a book to read, 100%. And I mean, Sapiens been suggested by so many other podcasts, and Joe Rogan including, Yeah. But in the future, I'm going to do a better job of actually having a couple points written down.
I would also recommend all 3 books, but one is like too long of a story. But the other one, Where Great Ideas Come From, shitty title, Where Good Ideas Come From, shitty title, but it basically gets into the head of some of the most brilliant people of our times and how they came across their invention or story, from Tim Berners-Lee, who invented the World Wide Web, or to Sir Isaac Newton, basically how he came across the fundamental laws of physics and gravity, and what made them able to see those informations or created those things. Brilliantly written, very interesting. I mean, basic example, Alfred Wallace and Charles Darwin were discovering the theory of evolution at the same time, actually around here in our hood, around Komodo here in Indonesia. Basically, where, but why was one earlier than the other? I actually just got more famous. Highly good, well-written book.
And are you a reader or you're a listener? Do you prefer audiobooks over reading?
Definitely reading. You process information differently. Yeah. I mean, audiobooks can be more efficient, but I love listening to podcasts such as yours.
Oh, baby.
And many others. And
that's the reason why Sapiens didn't stay in my head so much, because I was doing the audiobook. But yeah, there's so many things we're trying to do at the same time, and then you try like multitask, but as it known, men are not very good at this, especially me. Okay, that's about books, about widening your horizon. What would you say, what is a formula of reading books? How often you would say one book a month, 2 books a month, or there's really not?
I mean, depends on
such a thing.
How much time you have, how fast you can process information. I mean, if you manage 1 book a month, that's already awesome, I would say. If you have the dedication, that's a pretty good start. And then everything below is a little bit more, I mean, definitely more ambitious, but you got to have then dedicated time. I mean, there's a crazy story about Bill Gates, who does like these reading sabbaticals for like 1 or 2 weeks, where he then basically reads like 12 books.
Oh, wow. And, yeah, I'm probably not going to be there anytime soon. Okay, so Christian. As you can see, a collection of blueprints, that's our title. So as a blueprint is meant, it's like the plan of your life, or like the rules of your life. So what is your blueprint?
Go with the flow.
Hallelujah for that one. Yeah, that's okay. 1.
It's definitely 1. Or the Greek version is Pantarei, everything flows.
Pantarei, everything flows.
Everything flows.
Oh, that sounds way better than go with the flow.
It's the old version, basically.
How do you know all these Greek and Latin names for stuff?
I mean,
such a nerd.
A little bit nerdism, and then I was forced to it in high school. I had to learn 5 years of Latin.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I speak Latin.
You actually speak Latin?
Kind of.
Oh, wow. So you can easily go be a priest or a doctor.
Usually they slap you if you talk Latin.
Where?
That's another question.
Oh, wow. Okay. And so, yeah, go with the flow.
I would say, it's a tough one. I haven't thought about it. Go with the flow. Let me think. Very spontaneous.
And it's something also a suggestion for like probably younger people who are trying to get out of their rat race as well, because that's one of the.
Want to get into my spot? You're saying living in Bali, the dream. I would say get out of your comfort zone. Very important. And
never heard that one before.
Yeah, but I mean,
what is a synonym for comfort zone?
Because wherever you feel comfy, right? It's like whenever you do, like, also are maybe encaptured in certain routines, behavior patterns, or protocols that might not make you happy, or might get you to the point where you think like, why am I not fully satisfied with my life, or what is missing? And then you can find that like very serendipitously if you literally go with the flow. And sometimes serendipity was like also fairy tale islands in a Persian fairy tale about looking for something, getting on a voyage or on a quest, and then finding something totally else. You didn't know what you were basically were discovering.
Right. Well, the pioneers for that was Paulo Coelho, who wrote about the Alchemist.
Oh yeah, that's I almost put that in as well.
Because that's one of the very first books. I remember I actually read it in Latvian first, and then when I moved to Canada, I read it in English.
What was the title? Go with the flow.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's one of the probably the pioneers. And there was another book was the How a Monk Sold His Ferrari.
That's Robin Sharma. One. Yeah, that's also a nice one. Yeah, that's basically the young new age derivative of it.
Get the fuck out of your rat race.
Exactly. It's like, you're not constrained and shouldn't be by the expectations in your proximity or your environment. You should set the standards yourself, and don't be afraid of setting them as high as it can get.
Okay, so that is 2 now. Go with the flow. Get out of your comfort zone.
Get out of your comfort zone.
Or change the environment, or don't be afraid to change your environment.
All for the same. Stand all for the same. And the last one, it's funny. I flirted recently with a 20-year-old in a bar, and I felt almost guilty. I'm 37. And
I wouldn't say that. I thought you're 25.
That's how I look. It's my devilish advantage. And basically, you're so smart and so young. Yes. And basically, but we got to the point where I said, like, I put myself in her place and was thinking, what advice would I give myself as I would meet myself 17 years ago?
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Time. It's like, what would you say? Like, what kind of like pearls of wisdom that, like make it rule the world. One was, and I really liked it. It's not necessarily my blueprint, but I think it's a good one. It's like, it totally doesn't matter what you do. You can do anything, literally anything. It's just like whatever you do it with 100% dedication, your heart, your brain capacity, and your energy.
If you're an asshole, be 100% asshole.
Yes, exactly. That's what I mean. You made it.
That's my formula. That's my blueprint.
Yeah. So get out of your comfort zone.
Go with the flow.
Go with the flow, and never put your goals too low.
And if you do stuff, do 100%.
Do it.
Dedicate 100%. Yourself. Yeah. That I think is a perfect ending on one of the best podcasts I had so far.
Brown nosing again.
No, Chris, like it's so fun to talk to you. Like, and you are so knowledgeable, and I'm definitely gonna get you back, as I told you earlier when we had a break.
Totally.
I'm gonna try to get Chris as a co-host for if we have someone talking about psychedelics, if we have someone talking about startups. And wisdom in general. Yes.
And to the 5 subscribers here is like, look forward to hearing me back.
Yeah, we don't care. Okay, thank you, my man. Thank you so much.
That was
awesome.
That was awesome. Sorry, I hope I don't bitch you.